All right. So first question: What is the what action have you taken that has changed your life completely? Actually, I'm sorry. What three actions have you taken that have changed your life?
Free, nothing like going into crypto changed my life. That was crazy. Um, I got sick of the politics in the U.S. and I just got on a plane and went to Hong Kong one day. I just got
Hmm.
sick of it. You know, I really hate the politics. I think
Yeah.
the people are idiots and they're killing each other on the street.
Yeah.
They're no one's doing anything to improve the country. They're stealing everything they can. It's they don't. No one wants to look at the problems. So I just got out of that. I got so fed of it up of it. I just got on a plane and I went as far away on the other side of the world as I could.
Now,
And
did
that
you
was
have
really a
any prior
change.
experience with Hong Kong, or was it? Did you just pick a random
No,
country?
well, that was as far away from the U.S. politics as I could get. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't have to see the CNN, the media,
Yeah.
and the and
Now,
it,
so how'd you handle like the whole visa and everything? Like, are you based there now? Like, do you have residency there,
oh, I
or do you
moved
just
to
travel
Shanghai.
around?
I moved to Shanghai like 5 years ago, and that was great actually because China is the center of blockchain.
Hmm.
There are no blockchain companies in the U.S. There's like four
Oh.
of them. All the
Hmm.
blockchain companies are in China. All of the three biggest exchanges, OKX, Binance, and Huobi, are in China. And the Chinese government is adopting blockchain as a national strategy for their financial markets. So, and they're not succeeding at that. I'm not going to say that they're doing a good job of it, but they're at least willing to push blockchain in a way that the US government and the European government isn't going to do for 10 years after China does it. So they want to be at the forefront of blockchain adoption for corporations and industry adoption. So if you're raising money in China, the police will shut you down. They will come to your conference and shut you down. But if you're developing technology for industry and adoption, then there's government support. So I think that I moved at the right time, and I think that if you want to do anything in blockchain, that it's in Asia, and if not in China, then in Hong Kong and Singapore, and even in India, you don't see a lot of blockchain adoption, or in the EU, in the UAE, there's a little bit, but not much, and in
Now, don't you
Europe,
think that's kind of contradictory, right? Like blockchain, where things are not really controlled by anybody in a country where they want to kind of censor and control everything.
yeah, well, they don't. China is very, very interesting in terms of what the government censors. If a train crashes in China and you're blaming the Communist Party, they might censor that.
Hmm.
And they might even actually have the media attack not the Communist Party, but attack a government official. And some government official will have to resign and say, oh, it's his fault, and point the finger. And they have to make it look like justice is being served and they're fixing it and, whatever. So but if they mostly censor gossip about government officials sleeping with this actress or this or that. What they censor in
TMZ
China,
tabloids.
yeah, tabloid, and they go and they arrest a bookseller in Hong Kong for writing books gossiping about which government official is sleeping with what actress, which mistress is which, so some crazy um what they do censor. So I have a Canadian friend in China, and he hates the Communist Party, and he keeps posting all this negative stuff of anti-China, 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 and they don't censor him at all. They don't even actually even care. But if you say let's organize and I'm going to put together a riot and protest, then they'll start censoring you. But if you
Hmm.
were just bitching,
Hmm.
they don't care. So their censorship is different than it isn't what people think it is. And also, people think that the Chinese government's spying on everyone, right? In the United States, the NSA gets the data, and then it goes to a bunch of privates. It's collected by private companies, actually. It's not collected by the government. Those private companies can sell the data to third parties, and they're allowed to make money on the data they made collecting it for the government. And the NSA actually takes the data and they outsource they aggregate the data, then they outsource the analysis to private companies that are not US companies. They're overseas and they're not under US law. So if you actually worked in the government and you work with these people, the way that they have it set up is there's a company in the Cayman Islands that takes the contract and the data goes offshore. It's not like it's stored in America and then they can sell. They're even selling this data to advertising companies. Your ISP is a thing called a DNS server. They track every website you go to through DNS, and they don't care if it's encrypted with HTTPS. They know every website you're going to, and they build up a marketing profile of you. Like, do you go to Alex Jones? Do you go shopping? Do you go to mom blogging sites? What websites are you visiting? And they sell that data to whoever wants to buy it. So this is basically they make money on this, and it is what it is. And I was an insider, so I knew that, and I was involved with some of this stuff. And so when you look at that in the United States, a lot of the things that they're doing in the US are illegal in China. The Chinese government would never let its companies, WeChat for instance, take that data and put it on an overseas server. That server has to be in China, and if that data was put overseas, that person would be arrested and thrown in prison. But in America, if a private company takes data and they do it, and then it gets sent to an overseas contractor in the UK, and then it gets sent to a Cayman Islands firm, and that Cayman Island firm sells the data to Axiom or something, it's legal, right? So you don't really know, like, it's really crazy. So, and there's in China too, with the police in China, there's a police station, and they're involved in investigating the government officials, seeing who's doing what. The police officer in Shanghai, who works in the department for that area, he is not allowed to leave Shanghai. They take his passport. If he wants to travel overseas, he has to get permission for it, and they won't give him permission. If he travels to another city, he has in China. If he wants to go to Beijing, they make him get permission, and who he talks to, where he is, what hotel he's staying at, who he's talking to. This guy is like tracked at a level, like if you work in the Israeli military and you work at an elite cybersecurity unit for 2 years after when you're working there, and for 2 years after you work in that unit, you cannot travel overseas without telling them. If you meet anyone, you meet someone at a coffee shop, someone messages you on Facebook, you have to report that to your superiors so they can investigate that person and see if they're a security threat. You have to report what they talk to, if anyone asks you any information about your work, whatever, because you have information related to active operations that can cause damage to the government. So that level of scrutiny is applied in China to the government, because what they don't want is they don't want some guy in Beijing going to Shanghai and bribing the police officer to get blackmail material on people in Shanghai, right? In WeChat, the WeChat's run by Alibaba, I think, or Tencent, one of these huge companies that's owned by the government indirectly. If you want to get mass surveillance data on a WeChat user, they have 8 levels of stuff that you have to go through. It's not like some guy in Beijing could just go to the government and get your data file and get your conversations. The courts in China cannot get Tencent to hand over the chat logs. The court in Shanghai, I've had lawsuits. The court does not have the authority or ability to compel Tencent to hand over WeChat data. Only like this group in the government at a national, like these groups at the national level have. So they tried to do a wiretapping law in China with the NSA, and the Public Security Bureau, the police said, we don't want to give our data to Beijing. The local Shanghai police says, we'll handle the data, and if you want the data, you have to come to us and ask us for it. They tried to set up a national level NSA in China, and the local governments are too worried about being blackmailed. They will not let the national government hand over the surveillance. So what you see in the United States and Britain and UK and Five Eyes, it's going to take or 30 years for the Chinese government to get in place a national level surveillance program and for it to get us out of control in China as it is in the U.S. So so when you see oppression, so China is really weird. It's like being on the moon.
I've
It's
been
not
there. Yeah,
anything like
it's crazy. I mean, there's so much goes. My first time there, we were just driving around. They had skyscrapers everywhere in places
everywhere.
we'd
Yeah.
never been to, never even heard of. Like Chengdu, I was like, Chengdu is the size of Chicago, right? And it's a place
Yeah.
I never even heard of on a map. And I've been to 40 countries, right? And I was like, this is incredible, right? So China is, I mean, this is China's century in a way, I think.
I went there and I went to this town I've never heard of, and there was a Starbucks and a KFC on every corner in the country. It's like they have a Starbucks on every corner of this, and I'm like, what? And there's KFC, and it was like it was just crazy actually. So they're building skyscrapers everywhere, mag trains, infrastructure, airports, ports. They're consuming more concrete and steel than the whole rest of the world combined. So but anyway, the way that their government is structured, they don't have it's really different than a Western government. You can't so there is some censorship and oppression, but think about this. If you're Chinese government and you control WeChat, you're not going to censor people too much because they'd leave. You want to keep them in there, let them say what they want to say, because they could switch to Telegram. The Chinese government banned crypto, and then everyone just went from WeChat to Telegram. It took 2 days. The whole crypto community, like 10 million people, went from this app to this app. So when people think that the Chinese government has all the control and power and they can do whatever they want, they can't. They have no power at all. They have to look like they're in power and look like they're controlling things, but what they really control is very narrow and specific. But I would say that the U.S. government has 40 times more power in terms of budget and weapons and what they can get away with. Like the Chinese government cannot get away with anything. The second they do anything, they get screamed at in the international media. That's what you. So I think that one of the things that you have to understand is in China, the Chinese government banned Uber.
Mm-hmm.
The Uber drivers in Shanghai went down to the police station and beat the shit out of the police.
Wow.
And the next day,
wow,
they unlifted the Uber ban, and they forced one of the companies in China to buy Uber, so that the drivers wouldn't be out of work.
That was
They
Diddy,
just
I
forced
think.
the Chinese
Like
company to buy
Diddy,
it.
or something.
Didi, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So this is, and the government too, they can tell you should sell your company to this thing, but then you negotiate what the price is. And if you don't like the price, you can say, well, we didn't come to an agreement. They can't force. A lot of times the government recommends that you do something, but they can't force you to do it directly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really whereas in the United States, like the U.S. government, they can come in, arrest you, put you in solitary confinement. You can look Snowden and look at Assange and the embassy crap. Like imagine if the Chinese tried to do something like what the U.S. did to Assange overseas. Like they don't have that power at the level that I think that's good. I think that I think that even the U.S. has too much power and they're abusing it. And that imagine if every time they did something that Russia, China, Brazil, everyone complains it's unfair. I think that we need international rules, and I think that they need to be enforced fairly. It can't be just one guy with a stick who says this is how it's going to be, and do what I say, or I'm going to beat you with my stick. But I can do whatever I want, but you can't do that. And that's really how the world is being run right now, and that's why a lot of these countries are. And I don't think the U.S. is bad, but I think that they have problems in terms of. It's really crazy. I can't even talk about some of the stuff.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Good stuff.